Thanks everyone for joining. It's I think we all know each other on the phone, so that's nice. So the format today will be a conversation between Dr. Jordan and Bill, who I'll introduce in just a moment. And as you listen in, if you wouldn't mind putting yourself on mute, and any questions that you have, you can just click the chat button at the bottom of your screen. You can either privately chat a question or comment to me, or do it publicly, however you choose. And I'll keep track of that. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. Starting around 12:50, 12:55, we'll have a little Q&A at the end. So please feel free to send in your questions or comments.
My first question is, I don't know that I can mute this, but my office is pretty quiet and I've got everything turned off here.
No problem, Joanne. No worries.
I'm on an iPad. I didn't use my computer for this.
Okay. No, that's fine. Not to worry. Thanks for mentioning that.
You can, Joanne, you can
Yes.
unmute on an iPad. I'm watching on my iPad. It's up at the top. If you touch the screen, it'll have.
Oh, I
mute
see it
stuff.
now. Thank you. Thank you very
Okay.
much. Okay, I will do that then. Yeah.
Thanks, Christy. Well, we like to start these meetings by thanking not only everyone, but calling out certain individuals for their support of the Community Foundation, which you all do in your own ways, and we appreciate that. But today it's Peter Anderson's day. So Peter, I think everybody knows Peter, but Peter is with Wood Forest Wealth Strategies at Raymond James. He happens to be the husband of our CEO, Jennifer, and just a great guy. And the reason we're calling him out today is that he referred his client, Andrew Wordle, who is our newest community builder. And I think, as everyone knows, a community builder is someone who has established an endowed fund at the Community Foundation of $1 million or more. So that's a huge deal. And Peter, we really thank you for your work in that regard. And also Nancy Thies, of course, played a key role in that. So Nancy, thank you. And all the team at the Community Foundation who play an important role in making these things happen. So, and as of now, I'm pleased to report that we have 37 community builders and counting. So thanks everyone for your efforts in making that happen. So I'd like to introduce our speakers, which I'm going to keep it super brief because we all know Bill, and I think we probably all of us know Dr. Jordan as well. Starting with Dr. Jordan, he's an MD and he's a psychiatrist, has his own private practice, Jordan Consulting Group in Fort Lauderdale. And he was a team physician with the Dolphins. And Dr. J, I don't know if you know this, but I reached out to your wife for a couple little interesting tidbits that I could share with the group.
Uh-oh.
Your wife. And Janet also happens to be a former board member of the Community Foundation, by the way. So, but Janet shared with me that Dr. Jordan was a captain in the 82nd Airborne Division, made over 30 jumps. And I'll quote her. She said, Dr. J, she said, you are a quote unquote, you're a badass. So pardon my French, but I thought that was kind of cute on her part. So in addition, Dr. J, I understand that you played on a Masters basketball team, which is an over 70 group. You went to Las Vegas and won the national championship recently. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
So, and then turning to Bill, you know, Bill's been in practice since 1971. So we all know Bill. And by the way, you all received bios by email, so I'm skipping the details in those bios. But Bill, I reached out to your law partner, Kaylee, who shared a couple of tidbits with me about you. And and she said that you have a soft spot for animals, especially dogs. And she said that she reminded me that you were a co-author of a book on the psychology of business succession and estate planning. And lastly, wasn't sure if everyone knew that you now practice law, which we're looking at your office on Zoom here. You now practice law in what was your home years ago, and where you brought home your first child, who now is your law partner,
That's
Sean.
correct.
So
Correct. Yeah.
So
that is correct.
So really interesting backgrounds for both of you guys, and we're lucky to have you today to join us. So let's move now to Dr. Jordan, and we'll open up with some comments about the psychology of estate planning. And then after that, we'll go to a conversation between Dr. J and Bill, and I'll kind of moderate. So Dr. J, the floor is yours.
Okay, thanks. But first, let me express thanks to all of you for putting up with me for a few minutes. Quite an honor to be able to speak to this group, and I hope that we can have an informative exchange as we go along. I've got a few opening remarks. I'll try not to be more than 5 minutes. First of all, I think we're facing this pandemic, and with the challenges that it forces upon us, it emphasizes that we are so responsible for our personal safety and the safety of others. But it's also making us very aware of the fact that we are so interconnected with everyone else. And it is this element that forces us to be also aware of our vulnerability. Philanthropy in this COVID environment, I think, also has to change its goals and activities to some extent. Maslow's basic goals have to do with basic elements of food, clothing, shelter, some income. And I think that part of the goals of our efforts philanthropically during this environment have to focus upon the immediate needs of these basic necessities of our community. That doesn't mean we have to give up on our long-range goals, but we have to be able to survive in order to achieve them. In terms of meetings with individuals, clients, of course, I know this group has been doing this for years and years, but a couple of elements that I want to mention, and that is, first of all, know the topic well yourself. And also that means be well informed about the Community Foundation of Broward, or if there are other similar entities that you're dealing with. You have to be able to present a real purpose to in your efforts to deal with these clients in these meetings. Have just a small number of elements, of points of emphasis to present, and present your information with some energy and with some passion in the process. Now, with that being said, and going to, let's say, the overall emphasis of this meeting, I would say that the lessons that your clients should take from your meetings would be this: that these discussions are not about death and dying. They are not about end-of-life decisions. They are not about terminal illness or of facing the unknown. The discussions should focus upon the triumph of rational thinking over fear. It should focus on the victory of wisdom over emotion. It should be being able to sort of, I'll say, stick your thumb in the eye of fate and declare that you shall prevail in the continuing effort to advance and improve humanity in the efforts that you're undertaking. And with that, I'll leave you.
Great advice, Dr. J. I think that's a sort of a mindset that going into these meetings would be very helpful to have. Shift towards rationality and wisdom over fear. So, Bill, do you want to jump in on any comments that you'd like to respond?
Just to follow up on something that Jim said, Herman Melville in his classic novel of the sea begins with the story of a sailor's reminiscence of will making. And here's what the book says. It may seem strange that of all men, sailors should be tinkering at their last will and testaments. After the ceremony was concluded upon the present occasion, I felt all the easier. A stone was rolled away from my head. Besides, all the days I should now live would be as good as the days that Lazarus lived. I survived myself. So I think what Herman Melville was saying, I know I see it in clients even more today, is that I will get comments like, I feel like a load's been lifted off my back. I've planned for when I'm no longer here. And as Melville says, I survived myself. So I think what clients are saying more so today is that the planning that they did allows them to survive their own mortality. So when people say, oh, I feel like a stone's been lifted off my back, I think that they're saying that I've planned the future. When I'm no longer here, I've conquered death in a strange way, as Jim says. So that's, I think today, a lot of clients, we're as busy as we've ever been. Lots of clients are coming in. I think they're facing their mortality and surviving themselves. So the function that we serve as planners, I think sometimes we take it for granted what we're doing, but it's more than just leaving bequests to individuals. It's helping our clients psychologically deal with emotions of, if something does happen to me, my affairs are in order. And I think we play a real role, not just in numbers and graphs and words, but actually dealing with deep psychological needs of clients.
Bill, could you, and Dr. Jordan, could you speak a little bit about clients who come in different contexts? For example, some clients come to us as a business owner who has business related issues versus others come to us with a second marriage and there are complications associated with that. Others may be terminally ill, and that's a different scenario. So could you speak to those different contexts and how to approach each one of those maybe in unique ways?
Well, you mentioned business owner. I would say that the business owner has demonstrated through their constructive working lives their capabilities to assess and direct their actions and achieve results. And it would be incumbent upon the individuals here who are dealing with them in such meetings as we're discussing to emphasize those very characteristics in your discussions, because that in turn empowers them to be making decisions that are available to them because of their abilities, in spite of whatever conditions they might be facing at the time. So the emphasis again is upon not what you're facing, but what you're capable of doing.
Jim, I would follow up on that and maybe just put a little different spin on what you said, which is I can't tell you how many business owners have shown an interest in doing planning, but it's really hard to get them to the table often. In other words, they'll express an interest. I need to do this. I need to do this. And so the question becomes, how do you get them to actually get to the table, do, let's say, succession planning for a business owner? And I have found a couple techniques that have been successful. And one of those techniques is not so much to just say, if you don't do this planning, this is what's going to happen, but talk about other individuals that have not done good planning. For example, the Joe Robbie case is one that's often used, of an individual who was forced to sell his business because he hadn't really done good planning. So talking about other individuals, anonymous often, but you know, this can happen if you don't do succession planning when you're gone. This could happen to you. This could happen. So not so much with their own particular circumstance. The other thing I would say would be, for business owners, often the business is their legacy. So focusing on the legacy of this business being able to carry on with good succession planning, your legacy can continue on when you're no longer here. So what I was saying before, surviving yourself. So for many business owners, the most important thing in their life often has been their business, and sometimes to the exclusion of their children and other family members, which gets into a whole different area about what property means to certain people as individuals, which is a whole different topic. But how property in a will or a bequest can tell you a lot about the focus of an individual, and what they do with their property can tell you an awful lot. But those are just some ideas that I have on businesses.
Good ideas.
Bill, do you find that with a business owner, that the decisions about succession of ownership or succession of control relating to a business can kind of stall out the process? And so do you, for example, sort of shift and say, let's try to tackle some other, more
Right.
typical estate planning issues first,
Right.
and as a technique to kind of keep the ball moving forward in some respect, as opposed to getting stalled out by those
Yeah.
tough business
Great
decisions.
point. Great point. Oftentimes I'll say, let's get step one done. Before we get to step two, let's get the basics. Because business owners, are often so consumed by their businesses that they don't put a lot of emphasis on their estate planning, for example. So let's start with your healthcare, durable power of attorney, living will. Let's get some basic estate planning documents in order. So absolutely, just starting simple.
Yeah.
Because the first conference, and you start talking about, who's going to be the successor to this business, how are you going to pay for the estate tax? Getting into those kind of issues can stall the process, because business owners, like most families, I shouldn't say most families, but there's conflicts within business. There's conflicts with their partners. There's conflicts within the family. where, one child might need a lot of assistance, might have a bad marriage. One child might have an alcohol, drug problem. So you get business owners, they're running a business, a successful business, and sometimes they haven't spent a lot of time raising their children. And there are conflicts and problems within the family. And that just makes the whole issue of planning more difficult because they don't know how to deal with problems within their own family, let alone who's going to succeed this business. So you have, I'm sure Jim can talk to that, but you have conflicts within the business itself, within the family members, and it's a lot to deal with. So, planning for business owners can be really complicated because of the psychology. But like you say, if you can start them, with the basics, step one, and then we can start on step two. But it's a good point.
And maybe, one of the important things to understand are those dynamics within the family, and knowing that right up front before you get too far down the trail. So it would be helpful to know, is there a child with some issue or another?
And sometimes they don't want to disclose that.
Right.
It's too personal. So when you get a business owner who's stuck and they're not doing any planning, sometimes it's because they don't know how to deal with, I have a child, we have 3 kids, let's say. One is in bad marriage, one has alcohol problems, and one child is helping me here in the business and doing a pretty good job, but not knowing how do I put all this together with 2 children with problems. One is doing pretty well, but if you can start easy and sort of get them going into the process, then you can start to deal with the problems within the family. And yes, maybe one child, we do a protective trust for this child. Maybe the child 1 is going to get the business, take it over, be the successor. But one child, we're going to sort of equalize things through life insurance, through other assets. But, we're going to protect a child, not get them involved in the business because they have no interest in it.
Yeah.
But that takes really knowing the family and the client's willing to share. A lot of clients don't want to share with you the real story of what's going on within the family. It's embarrassing.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing to them.
Dr. Jordan, what would you suggest to us when we're meeting a client that's a new client and we're trying to unearth some of these issues in an initial meeting? These are very private matters, obviously, might be embarrassing to talk about or uncomfortable to talk about. How should we approach that initial meeting to kind of break the ice?
I really feel that your emphasis should be upon challenging them to reveal their own personal strengths and weaknesses to some extent. And with that, some of their complex issues involving whether it's family members or business partners or whatever, this kind of the information, the background is often the key to having a successful meeting with these individuals, rather than, let's say, trying to just have a direct discussion with minimal background information. It's not going to be very productive at all. So you do need to get into their history, and probably the best way is to begin to ask them to really talk a little bit about their achievements. I would think that would give you entry into a more likely branching out into some of the problematic areas in the family.
I've also found that bringing up the topic of philanthropy is another way of kind of breaking the ice, posing a question of, what's important to you? What are you interested in? Bill's interested in animals, has a soft spot for dogs, and then that's kind of a way of do you find that might be a good entree to getting some of that personal touch?
Well, it is, because you're talking about their chief interests. And many people, of course, are busy. So they have interests that they might never have been able to pursue. And you might be offering them the option of achieving what their goals might have been at one time by virtue of decisions they're making in such meetings as this. Well, I think, again, we're talking about empowering the individual in these meetings. I think that's a very key element that will make it more successful in the efforts you're putting forth working with them.
Okay. How about, we talked about the business owner. What about second marriage situation, which we see a lot of in our offices? Any advice on how to treat that maybe a little differently than the business owner? Maybe one and the same person, but.
Yes, I just offer a couple of things there, because so often it's not the second marriage, it's the children from the first marriage that pose the most significant problems in the cases that I've been involved in. So I would just say that in preparation for such meetings, it should be clarified about the client's mental capacity, moving into even the question of mental competency by the legal efforts. And also the issue of being vulnerable to persuasion or manipulation question should be addressed. I think these elements need to be clarified before entering into any such discussions as this, in this particular kind of second marriage issue.
And Bill, what sort of things should we be doing to accomplish what Dr. J just said?
Well, I look at this, there's probably 4 main reasons why people come in and do planning. So when somebody walks in our door, sometimes I'll look at a client and say, why are they here? And so, I want to be a good listener. As Jim says, I think the key to a lot of this is listening ability, to be a really good listener. And I think so much of psychology, and I'm not a psychologist, but people, I think our role is to help people make their own decisions, so that a lot of what we ask are leading questions. What do you think about this? What do you think about that? It's not so much that we're telling clients what to do as to helping them work through the process so that they can make their decisions, and we're helping them and guiding them in the decision-making process. And, I'm not the psychologist here, but I mean, you have the age-old picture of somebody on the couch, and the psychologist is talking to them, they're on the couch, and all of a sudden the patient says, aha, I see it, I know the answer, I figured it out. Well, what the psychologist is doing is just asking a lot of questions. Jim can talk about this, but so much of what we do is being good listeners, asking leading questions, and helping the client create their plan. whatever that plan might be. So the psychology of planning to me is often, again, being a good listener and helping the client to say, yes, this is the best thing that we can do. With second marriages, one of the reasons that I think clients should be there is stability. So having stability in a second marriage situation, because you've got conflicting interests, children from prior marriages, you have your current spouse. So the most dangerous situation for a second marriage is no planning, because then something happens and all these conflicting interests show up. But by good planning, everyone is taken into consideration. The children from the first marriage, children from the second marriage, spouses. So I think good planning emphasizes stability. We can get stability. So if something happens to you, we're promoting stability. So that is the key factor for me in a second marriage, is making sure the clients understand you have potentially a very unstable situation here. And what we're trying to promote is stability. Some of the other reasons people come in, and especially I think for charitable planning, we've touched on it, is immortality. I think people making, let's say, a community builder. So with that $1 million gift to the community foundation, they, in essence, make themselves immortal in a way, because what they've stood for, their assets are going to continue on for a good Broward community, for example. So they're surviving themselves. So charitable planning is promoting what they're interested in, surviving themselves. So stability, immortality. Another reason, believe it or not, I think some people have a sense of guilt. So they are going to leave their wealth, and they're going to take care of people because somehow they feel like they haven't been the father, the mother, maybe they haven't been the child, grandfather, and somehow I think they feel like they can make up for their lack of involvement by money or assets. So sometimes you'll see people that use property for, I want to take care of my family. Maybe I can make up for my lack of involvement through wealth. Perhaps we can talk at some point about incentive trust. Property is a carrot. If you do this, you get this. Property can be a punishment. You're not getting something because I'm punishing you. I'm taking you out of the will as a punishment. We all see that. So, wealth and what people do with their planning, that we'll see how property can be used. The psychology of dealing with, these are probably, we could spend a whole hour just talking about any one of these issues, but when we see clients using their property for purposes that the long-term effects are going to be harmful to the family. So seeing people use wealth as a punishment, or as a carrot, or as an incentive, that we can incentivize somebody. Those are topics, as planners in dealing with clients who are using their wealth, using their planning for different purposes. So estate planning, one of the purpose can be the high ground. I'm here It's the moral thing to do. I need to preserve my wealth for my family. And most of our clients, I think, are in that mode, that they're there because of the importance of planning for their spouse, their children, generations to come. But sometimes in dealing with clients, they have goals with their planning. And again, that's probably a whole different subject, but you know, clients that are wanting to control from the grave, you know, certain clients are wanting to penalize other family members. So we don't have to get into all that, but that's the psychology.
Dr. Jordan, you mentioned the importance of establishing capacity, and especially in the context of a second marriage. What sorts of things, and this is to you and Bill both, what should we be doing to properly document that in our files in the event the child later protests that mom or dad didn't really understand or was influenced to do this or that? That's kind of a legal question, but you know, I'm wondering your thoughts.
You know, that issue also comes up, I think, with the terminally ill. And I think that individuals in that setting where a meeting relative to, let's say, having philanthropic goals to be discussed is giving them like a final opportunity to make really terrific decisions and give them control of issues important to them in spite of this, let's say, potentially fatal illness with which they are dealing. But in order to enable them to do that, I think it's really important to go through getting an assessment of their mental capacity so that their decision making is not, I mean, it can still be challenged and questioned, but it would ramp up and buttress their decision making, even though they are perhaps in an invalid status. And I think forcibly create a much more internal feeling of strength in them, knowing that very likely that their wishes will be completed and not challenged.
Great point. Great point. Bill, any practical tips along those lines that you'd like to share to make sure we're documenting our files properly, you know, as best we can? Matters like this.
Well, you know, first of all, you know, what I like to do too with a terminally ill client is, again, be a good listener, but ask a lot of leading questions and pull out of them, you know, what is it at this time in your life? You know, you're coming down the home stretch here. You know, what's most important on your mind at this difficult stage? Because I think it gives them something to focus on other than the negatives. So, you know, they're dealing with chemotherapy, they're dealing with whatever the difficulties are, you know, and often it might be a grandchild or grandchildren. Well, you know, I love my grandchildren. And so getting them to focus on positive things. Well, what can we do for your grandchildren? Can we do a 529 plan? Can we do, you know, what are some of the things that we can do now so that when you're no longer here, life is easier for your children, grandchildren. Mm-hmm. So in that regard, getting their mind focused on constructive. What is it constructively, positively that we can do at this point? I think that's a big help. And here again, I think never underestimate our role as advisors in terms of the psychology of helping our clients through a difficult process, that we're there and serving a function that is extremely important because nobody other than us can do some of this. I mean, we're the only ones, I mean, physicians can deal with their medical needs, but I think that we serve a function of helping them focus on, again, surviving themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as far as documenting capacity, you know, that is something where we do memos. In other words, I will do a memo to the file. Our witnesses will do memos to the file. So we do document, you know, the events leading up to it, the office conference, the signing. You know, we will talk to the client extensively at a signing about all kinds of things to that we can assess their thinking capacity. And then we'll document the 3-part test, and we will write memos, and we will be ready to testify based on our observations. Now, some clients, we have sent them to geriatric physicians to, you know, on the day they're going to sign documents, have them visit their physician and tell the physician, I'm here, I want you to document my file, and I want you to be able to testify if needed as to my capacity. So referring to specialists, I don't think most of us are fans of videotaping signings. I mean, that is a possibility to have a videotape, although often the client may come across looking pretty bad, get confused, and then what do? You know, strike that one, go back, rewind the tape, do it all over again. I mean, there's all kinds of problems, but I like to super document our file.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is what I like to do.
The comment about helping clients do something constructive now, and you mentioned doing something for grandchildren, for example, to me, that brings up the notion of collaborating with the financial advisor and with the allied professionals, you know, to come up with the importance of having them in the process so that you can put your heads together. Number one, they can share background, important background. Often the accountants or financial advisors have been with these clients maybe longer than us and can illuminate, you know, important things that we may have missed. So that notion of collaboration, I think, is, in my view, would be helpful towards that goal of coming up with something immediate and present that they can do. That's a positive first step. So, okay. I just want to remind everyone, if you have a question or comment, go ahead and send it through the chat. And we're coming up in a minute or so here on our Q&A portion. I wanted to ask both you guys, do you think with the times that we're in now with COVID and we're having to do meetings by Zoom more often than not, does that change? What are the dynamics of meeting clients by Zoom that we should be cognizant of, both from a psychological point of view and a comfort level point of view, and maybe from a legal point of view too?
Well, let me say, first of all, I have some feelings about how you appear on a video. You'll notice today I'm wearing a white shirt. I have a tie on. I think that our appearance, just when we do a video conference, you know, I mentioned to our staff, and, you know, when you do a video or a Zoom conference, look, first of all, your appearance, you know, make sure that it's good, because you're projecting your professional approach, your professional attitude. And so, and maybe that's just peculiar to me. but I want to make a good presentation. So second thing that we started in early March is, and I'm sure I'm not the first one to think of this, but I decided we were not going to have any more clients in our office, too dangerous. So we've had, this morning, I think we've had 3 signings, wills and trusts being signed, all outdoors. And this morning's really a beautiful morning out there. But you mentioned our office is a house. It's 60 years old. It's all been converted into a professional office. It's on an acre. It's zoned commercial. It's full of trees. We're fortunate in that we can meet clients outside. And when we set up a conference, we explain it. You know, we'll be meeting outside. We do have a porch that we can meet under when it rains, but we like to be out in the fresh air, the wind blowing. And so we want to do our signings, our conferences outdoors. And, you know, our clients really like it. And the clients wear a mask, we wear a mask. Our clients say, we really like this. In fact, we've had clients, several, say, do you mind if we just sit here for a while? We like this. We like it being outside. So our etiquette is, first of all, look good when you're on a Zoom meeting. Second of all, I would be very, very safety conscious of meeting clients in your office today. That's just not my take.
Yeah.
Just a couple of words. First, you look very handsome today, Bill, by the way. But along that line, I think with the issue of Zoom and the issue of technology, that many people are kind of uncomfortable with that. And it goes, I think, to the core of our meetings with individuals under these circumstances, whether it's in person or by Zoom or otherwise. And that is, if you are comfortable yourself, that is the biggest factor in bringing about calm and comfort in those who are struggling with some major issues here that you're working to help resolve. So I think it's really incumbent upon all of us as professionals to prepare ourselves properly so that when we do have the meeting, it is one in which we inspire this kind of calm and comfortableness in our clients.
Mm-hmm. Great advice. Great advice.
No problem. Thanks.
Okay. I think we should, Mark, if you're okay with this, maybe open it up to a little Q&A session. And if anyone has a question, you can either chat it to me or you can just unmute yourself and pose the question or comment. So go right ahead, everybody. Peter, I see you're unmuted. Do you have a question?
I do. I sent it to Bill privately. I didn't mean to exclude the rest of the group, but I'd love to pose this question if I may. I haven't had to put many questions or use the chat box on Zoom. Bill, do you find business owners are motivated by retention of the value of the business after death to complete their planning, even if they don't care about continuation of the business after death? As financial advisors, you mentioned it's hard for us to always get business owner clients to the table. And that's one thing I have found to be effective.
Great point. Excellent point. Because they're very, as you said, on value. They're very good widget makers. I mean, whatever they're doing, they're successful. And so they're often focused on technical aspects. How do we preserve this business? How do we make sure that it retains its value, that we have the right managers in place? Yes. And so that it may be sold. I mean, what your question implies, this may not go to a child or children. It may, so let's make sure that this is in a position to sell. So it's not always succession to the children or other family members, but how do we keep this, and the concern is when I'm no longer here, I think implied in your question is when I'm no longer here, this whole thing's going to fall apart.
Yes, the instant loss of value that takes place.
Yeah, yeah. Because a lot of times you have children involved in the business and they're not capable really of running it, that mom or dad, whoever is the person running it, if they're not there, the other people are not capable. So that is a real issue to deal with in businesses, is the entrepreneur who is indispensable. And when they're gone, the business is not going to continue because there's no one there really to maintain that level, the capacity level. So is that what you were talking
Yes.
about?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll jump in with a comment for Jennifer and Nancy and Jenny. It seems like a lot of the things that Dr. Jordan and Bill were talking about really apply to you guys as well in your interactions with clients. The notion of empowerment and, helping clients illuminate their personal interests that maybe they've had to neglect over the years because of business and demands and the like. And although it applies to us, I hear a lot, to me, it sounds like those are similar challenges and things that you face.
Absolutely. I was just thinking about what Bill and Jim were saying about I think we give our clients a peace of mind. When we go through the process of a philanthropic conversation, we get testamentary documents together. It's like now they've got everything tightly in a bow and packaged up, and they feel really, really good about it. So I got to believe that helps with psychology as well. And mental
I
health.
agree, Nancy. Because I know, you and I've been in situations working with clients that they end up thanking us at the end of, at the signings, where they're sending us thank you notes and bringing us gifts because they feel like, as Bill said, the stone has been taken off their head. They're happy that they feel that they've overcome something that was kind of looming for them for a long time.
Okay. Well, any other questions or comments? I'm looking at the screen. I don't see any. So I am going to now hand it over to Mark Kotler, who wanted to share a little information with us about some things happening at the Community Foundation. So Mark.
Thanks so much, Kurt. And Dr. Jordan and Bill, this was just really an excellent thought-provoking conversation. And like you just heard from Nancy and Jenny, it is really closely mirrors our philanthropic planning conversation. So it's very helpful. I wanted to leave you all with a very positive story about one caring attorney who really turned his client's grief into an act of philanthropy. And from this act, it's helped countless families over the years to reverse the emotional downward spiral that you can get from either mental or physical health issues, or even the fiscal instability that goes along with them. The person I'm talking about is Harold Franks, whose wife had lost her battle with cancer back in 1987. They had no family, I should say. They had no children to say. And so Harold himself afterwards wanted to help the community and wanted to do something for people who were struggling with cancer. So he spoke with his trusted advisor, who was the attorney Jim Blosser, who suggested to him, look, put together an endowment fund, a testamentary fund with the Community Foundation, so that your good intentions could live on. And we've just talked about that, about the immortality and the living on of your legacy. So Harold could never have imagined that now, really 3 decades later, that he's helped so many people. And in particular, I want to tell you about one family. They have a daughter who's 6 months old, and she's going through the dual issues of not only trying to recover from leukemia, but she also got COVID-19. And to add to the tragedy, the mental anguish and the lack of financial means that the father had because he lost his job because of COVID-19 led him to attempt suicide. Now, fortunately, he survived, and they got in touch with the Jessica June Children's Cancer Foundation, who stepped in, and because of the support that Harold's fund provides, and as well as another partner, the Humana Foundation, he was able to get, they were able to receive rent money, food, and transportation to the hospital in Miami, where the young baby was receiving a bone marrow transplant, which saved her life. You'd be happy to know that now baby and father are both on the road to recovery. Another outcome of this story is that the CEO and founder of the Jessica June Children's Cancer Foundation, her name is Sandra Movdi. Sandra's been working with the Community Foundation for years. And as a result of these interactions and the support she's received, she herself has created a testamentary fund agreement to make sure that her organization will be fiscally secure for the future and will continue forever their life-saving work. So more on a personal note for you, we look to help ease your stress and your mental anguish that might be brought on by your clients wanting to do last-minute year-end giving. So we will quickly and also effectively help you with their contributions, either from a sale of a business, a transfer of stock, a QCD from their IRA, a testamentary agreement, or anything of the like. We'll be working, the staff will be working through December 31st, so you can email us or give us a call and we'll be responsive to you. Oh, look, you all look like you're kind of relaxed already, so that's good. We made our point. But before you go, I do want you to know about our last meetings that are coming up. In January, we're going to select the date really soon. We're going to have our Community Foundation of Broward client experience. This is for professional advisors who are new to the Community Foundation, and they can hear directly from one of our clients and their experience when they were connected by their professional advisor. So if you have someone in mind, a colleague or someone you refer business to that you think would benefit from participating, please just connect them with us. We'd love to have them participate. On February 2nd is our next PAC meeting, and that will be the impact of the election on estate and wealth planning, talking about mental anguish and and then on May 25th, highlights from the Heckling Institute Estate Planning Conference. Our regular meeting will be on May 25th following the conference. Well, that's all for today. I wanted to thank our speakers again, Dr. Jordan and Bill, fabulous job. And Kurt, you always keep us running like a clock. Thank you so much. We'll be sending out an email with your certificates of continuing education credits, so you'll get them soon. And I wanted to thank you again for making time to join us today. And lastly, just wishing you and your family a very happy Thanksgiving.